Hello, everyone. My name is Erin, and welcome to today's webinar on Money Basics, Spending, Borrowing, and Saving It. Thank you for spending this time with us today. We hope you find the talk informative and enjoyable. If you have any technical issues or need any help during the webinar, please send a chat message to myself or my colleague Eric Steiner. We're both listed in the panel in GoToWebinar, and we will do our best to help you throughout the talk. Before I turn the presentation over to our financial expert, I'd like to tell you a little bit about David Giroux. Mr. Giroux is a certified credit counselor with over 30 years' experience in the financial services industry, where he held senior positions at several large financial institutions. His experience includes investment securities and mortgage banking. He's a certified financial educator, certified credit counselor, and holds a certification in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Dave is a frequent presenter of financial literacy classes and workplace seminars nationwide. Mr. Giroux is happy to answer any questions you have on these topics at the end of our talk today, so we wholeheartedly encourage that you submit any inquiries you have. Just use the question or chat panel in your GoToWebinar meeting panel on the right of your screen. Thank you again so much for attending, and welcome, Mr. Giroux.
Thanks very much, Erin. I appreciate the intro, and welcome everybody to our Money Basics presentation. I'd love to do this presentation for folks because I think that it has an application to so many people that end up listening. It may not be every section, but usually people come away saying, at part of it, oh, that's me, or I can pick something up, from that. So, just kind of an overview of the subjects that we're going to cover today. We'll be talking about a spending plan. That's the expense side of a budget, and how that plays into setting goals and why it's important to have that budget. You're going to hear me mention that budget word several times during the presentation. We'll be talking about debt repayment strategies. This is a critical issue for so many folks. December of 2013, the United States ended up, average household had in excess of $15,000 of consumer debt. And we're talking primarily credit cards, personal loans. So obviously debt repayment is an issue that a lot of folks are struggling with, and some people unfortunately just simply jump to one solution or another without knowing that they have options. And then finally, we're going to touch on credit. More important than ever. People have realized, for a long time, yeah, my credit's important. It has an impact on different parts of my life. I'm going to touch on a couple areas that maybe folks aren't even aware of today. So managing your credit being that third section. So a spending plan is the foundation of a solid financial future. I truly believe that. I think whether you're struggling, with debt, whether you're struggling trying to, to make ends meet, or whether, you're doing pretty well, but you want to make sure that I'm handling my finances as efficiently as possible, I think a spending plan, is really, really critical. As I mentioned before, the spending plan is the expense side of the budget. There are two sides. There's income. We have very little control over the income. We've got an agreement with our employer to pay us X amount of dollars for the work that we do. So that's what's expected. That's what we can plan for on a monthly basis. About the only way that income can change is if we're doing more work, some overtime. Maybe we have to look at the W-4 allowances. That does have an impact on our income. If I've got more money being taken out, it gives me less money to deal with on a monthly basis. Maybe I should be changing those allowances to put more money into my budget. But the spending plan, because it deals with the expense side, is the side that we really have, control over. So, how can it help us? Well, cover necessary expenses while saving for the future. Obviously, cover those expenses. If I'm going to allocate money in an expense category, then I've got it available. The saving, though, is the key here. And I want to tell you, I have never worked with anybody in going through a budget process that I didn't insist that we had some kind of an allocation in the budget for savings. And for some people, that's starting very modestly. Maybe it's starting at $20 a month. That may be the first time they've ever saved $20. But I think that that's key. Paying bills on time, obviously, if I've got the money allocated, I should be able to pay it on time. Follow a payment plan to reduce debt. If debt is my issue, where am I going to find the money? It's going to come out of my budget. Nobody's just going to give me money to pay debt. I've got to find it in my budget. Establish and maintain good credit. That sort of goes back to that second bullet point of, if I'm paying my bills on time, I'm establishing or maintaining, a good credit score. Build an emergency fund. Goes back to the first bullet point of saving. I've got to have something available for those obstacles that life just simply throws at us. I'm going to have a car repair. I'm going to have something that happens, as far as the house is concerned. So there's always going to be something that I need that money for. If I don't have the emergency fund, I'm going to get the money from probably a poorer choice. A choice that's going to cost me more down the road. And then finally on here, we're talking, saving for retirement. And that becomes an issue that all of us need to spend more time on. Retirement is going to become more and more a personal issue. We're going to have to find ways to provide for ourselves. The government programs that our parents and grandparents relied on have changed, and they're changing more. So it means that what we've got to do is we've got to look at those opportunities. We've got to look at the retirement accounts available through our employers. We've got to look at our individual retirement accounts, and we've got to start to provide for ourselves. Where do you start when you're developing this spending plan? What I don't want people to do is to do budgeting the way that I did it for 30 years. And that is, you start with the number on top, and that's how much money do I make? And then the second number is here's my rent, or once I was lucky enough, it's here's what my mortgage is. That's always the first expense that we think of because it's the biggest one. And then it's here's what my car payment is. Here's what I'm going to pay for food. Here's what I'm going to pay for expenses. And I get down to about the fifth line, and I've got to just simply erase it and put in another number because I ran out of dollars. And what I would say to you is that's no way to do the budget. Because, all I'm doing is I'm forcing numbers in now, to make it end up at zero at the end. Instead, what I want people to do is I want people to think about tracking expenses. This is why there's a little bit of pain involved. It takes it takes a commitment when you say, I'm going to commit to a budget process. That commitment comes with a little bit of pain because the tracking of the expenses means I've got to do a couple of things, and there's no magical or best way. I've had people over the years that kept receipts. That's the way that they tracked it. Other people, just kind of keep a little notebook and keep the expenses written down on a daily basis. Other people create a spreadsheet. It's whatever works for you. But what we want to see is what's the actual amount that you're spending. Because until you know what that actual amount is, instead of the guessed at, instead of an amount that you wish it were, until you know what that actually is, you don't know whether that's an appropriate amount or not. Should I be, should I be thinking that, well, maybe there's some savings in that category? So tracking the expenses is the first thing. Second, explore ways that you can reduce your set expenses. And I've got examples in here. I've got, insurance, phone, cable, these are categories that have become very, very competitive over the last few years. And so how do I reduce those expenses? I shop them. I take advantage of the fact that it's become a very competitive market. I don't just simply pay my car insurance because the premium comes due. I don't just simply pay my cell phone bill. I don't just simply pay my cable or internet provider. I shop those expenses. And then once I'm armed with those numbers, I go back to my provider and I say, gosh, I really like, the company. I like our relationship. But unfortunately, here's the quote that I got from the competition. And you know what will happen in a lot of cases? They'll either meet or beat that. They don't want to lose you as a customer. But what they're relying on is they're relying on our laziness. They're relying on us just simply paying the renewal, as most of us do when that comes through, because we don't want to go to the bother of getting competitive prices. We don't want to go to the bother then of passing that on to our provider. But I'm telling you, this is a tried and true method to save money in your monthly budget. The last three bullet points have really a relation to each other. Identify variable expenses to reduce or manage more effectively. Items like food, utilities, entertainment. Be realistic. Don't set expectations you can't sustain. And identify needs versus wants. Now, let me tie those together, because what I'm saying here is that we've got a good deal of control over these areas of our budget, of our spending plan. These are variable expenses. And people are going to say, well, I can see where I would have control, over the food. I just pay less, right? I just eat less. But that's not necessarily, the way that the savings comes up. This needs versus wants is really what comes into play in so many of these areas. I need food to survive. I need, basic sustenance. I want to go to a restaurant, to order from a menu, to have a waitress come and serve me, to clear my dishes, right? So that's where I can find some savings. Now, what I also want to put forward to you is it's all right to choose that want. We can use that as a simple reward for ourselves during the day. But there's a couple of things that come into play. Number one, can I afford it? Number two, do I recognize the fact that I'm making a conscious decision? Utilities. Some people will say, how do I have control over utilities? And what I would say back is, you've got complete control over the thermostat. What I want in my house is I want it to be toasty warm in the winter. I want it to be nice and cool in the summer, really beat that heat and humidity. But there's a price to pay for that. It's okay to choose that comfort level as long as I can afford it and I'm making a conscious decision. Transportation. I need basic transportation to get to and from my job, right? That's a need. I need to get my kids to school. I need to be able to have transportation to run errands. What I want is a big, roomy SUV. Comfortable, prestigious, safe, expensive. Again, needs versus wants. Okay to choose that as my vehicle if I can afford it, and if I realize that I've got a conscious choice to make in that decision. wherever possible, make finances automatic. You know, we take advantage of direct deposit. About 99% of the people that are eligible for direct deposit, in fact, take advantage of it. But this next item, the bill pay service, it drops down to almost 50%. All of the banks and major credit unions offer bill pay service free through your checking account. Why is it that only half of the people take advantage? You know, when I query people on that, you know, they'll say things like, well, I feel like I'm losing control. My budget's so tight that I just don't want the creditor to be able to take the money whenever they want. I need to have better control. And so my answer back is, well, that is one way. You can cede all control, you know, to the vendor, to the creditor. You can let them go in when the account is due and take whatever the amount is that's due at the time. That is one way. Or you could do bill pay another way, the way that I've done it. You set up all of your creditors, all of your payees in your bill pay system, and then on payday, I know that the money's in there because it's been directly deposited. Now I go in and I choose my list of creditors, and I say, you know, pay the utility company, pay them this much money, and by the way, pay it on this particular date, and I push the button, and that's when it happens. I save the cost of postage. I save, you know, the envelopes. I save the worry of not knowing when is the bill going to be delivered. And I've taken complete control over my account. That money doesn't go out automatically. It doesn't go out until I push the button. And what I would say is, if you're going to commit to a budget process, if you're not taking advantage, take advantage of bill pay as part of the budget process. Using payroll deduction or auto transfer to build savings. We use payroll deduction, for instance, for 401ks, 403bs, TSPs for government employees. Right? That money comes out of our paychecks automatically by the payroll department. That's why those accounts build up. That's why you accrue, totals to them, because it takes that monthly decision out of your hands. So what I say is, let's use that same principle to build, for instance, the emergency savings. If my goal is I want to have $2,500 at the end of the year for I don't care what. I want to buy a house. I'm saving toward a down payment. I'll feel comfortable when I have $2,500 in emergency savings. Whatever it is. So and let's say I get paid every other week. So I go to the bank, I go to the credit union, and I say, when my direct deposit comes in, take $100 and put it in my savings account. Right? I get paid every other week, so that's going to be roughly twice a month. That's that $200. It's 26 pay periods, so I'm going to have $2,600 to my goal of $2,500 if I use that auto transfer. I take the decision out of my hands. Auto deduct for insurance premiums. Some people say, well, why have you selected that on there? And I'll tell you, for a couple of reasons. Number one, our insurance is such an important category that we don't want the coverage to lapse just simply because we forgot to pay the bill or we didn't pay it on time. So so that's one reason. But there's another reason, and that is if that policy lapses. And we catch it. Oh my gosh, I forgot, my car insurance was due, my homeowners, my renter's insurance, whatever it is, it was due. I forgot to pay it. It lapsed. I get the notice from the insurance company. I call them. I tell them, gosh, that was a mistake. And what do? They're happy to reinstate it. Again, they don't want to lose you as a customer, so they're happy to reinstate it. But what do? They charge you a reinstatement fee. Those reinstatement fees run $50 to $100. It's the same as paying an overdraft fee at the bank. It's the same as paying a late fee to your credit card company. Avoid those. Watch out for cash flow traps. When we're working with folks on budgeting, one of the things we look for is what kind of credit card balances do they have? And is that balance something that that they just typically have on an ongoing basis, or has that been going up? If it's been going up, and I'm not talking about where you've got a justification. I just came back from a nice vacation. I used my credit card. I went out. I did some shopping. I bought some clothes. I bought some furniture. I used my credit card. No, I'm talking about the fact that it just seems like my balance is just constantly just going up a little bit, going up a little bit. That probably is an indication that the person is using the credit card to supplement their day-to-day living expenses. We're fooling ourselves. We're not living within our means. Living within our means means we've got to take the income that we have, and we've got to provide for debt and living expenses out of that, and savings out of that. If I can't do that, I find myself, I'll charge this or I'll charge that. That's how these balances go up. If that's happening in your life, that's an indication that there's some serious undertones. You need to address it as soon as possible. Nothing good happens by ignoring it. Trade-up syndrome, that's kind of an interesting human foible. We've heard about this, for years. It's just, I'll spend as much as I make. Why am I spending more? If I'm lucky enough to get a raise at work, let's look at that for just a minute. Why would I spend more? I've got the same amount of lunches during the months that I've got to provide for. I'm going to wear the same clothes to work. I'm going to travel the same distance. So so none of the costs associated with me doing my work went up. I just was lucky enough to get a raise. And what I would say to you is you've got to look at those opportunities as savings opportunities. When you get that raise, look at increasing the contributions to your 401k. Look at the opportunity to start to put more into emergency savings accounts. Treat it as a savings opportunity. Maintenance expenses. This is an easy one. It's a big one that we see people overlook. I had a client that I started working with not too long ago, and when I got his budget worksheet back, we had a consultation, and I said, I was complimenting him, on the work that he did, tracking his expenses and so on. But I said, the one thing I see is, gosh, you don't have anything in there for car repair. There's no budgeted amount. And he said, oh, Dave, I just got a new car, so I didn't put anything in there. And I told him. I said, well, Dan, congratulations on the new car. So does that assure that you're never going to have, a tire blowout? Are you ever going to change the oil in that car? There are, I'm not saying put hundreds of dollars a month away, but what I'm saying is think about the things that come up in your apartment, in your home, with your car, and try to put a few dollars out of every check into that maintenance category. Again, it makes it a whole lot easier when that repair comes up. Failing to track cash expenditures. This is huge, folks. I've said for a couple of years, I really believe that the invention or the creation of the ATM or the debit card was both the best financial innovation and the worst financial innovation in the last 50 years. The best is, it's pretty obvious. How simple can it be? I need some cash, I go to the ATM, I run my card. I stop at the gas station, I run my card. But I can also leave myself open for some problems. Let's use that trip to the gas station. It's Friday night. I stop after work, I fill up, I run my card. I can check later on, and my account is going to show me a balance that's not true. Why? Because that service station purchase hasn't come out yet. I can go to my account on Saturday. I can go on Sunday. I might even check on Monday, and I'm seeing the wrong amount. Why is it? Because the amount doesn't debit out of our account until the vendor reports it. And that service station may be keeping all of their receipts through the weekend. Maybe they send it to their bank on Monday, and maybe it debits from my account on Tuesday. But what happens when it does debit? My bank goes back in and says, you used the card on Friday, and that money comes out of my account as of Friday. If I've not accounted for that, I could have overdrafts through the weekend thinking I had more money available. An overdraft every single time I overdraft $35, $40 just because I was not accounting for that properly. Now, here's another way. I go into the grocery store. I buy $30 worth of groceries. I run my debit card, right? And what happens after that? Either the cashier or the little box that I ran my card through says, do you want cash back? And I think, yeah, I do. I need $20, walking around money. So I run that, for $50. They give me my $20 back. Now my groceries have only been $30, but I ran it for $50. And here's my problem. I don't just do that once or twice. I do it 4 or 5 times a month. I may have $100 to $200 of cash back transactions. I've got to account for those. Maybe it's not costing me an overdraft, but what it's doing is it's allowing $100 to $200 of expenses to fall through the cracks. I'm not accounting for that cash back. So again, just be very careful with those kinds of transactions. Take control of your debt. This says life goals are contingent upon reducing debt. Debt repayment strategies should reflect personal goals. All this means is that the debt situation and how it affects us is different for every single person. If you're in my category and I'm looking at trying to get ready for retirement, I can't be taking credit card debt and student loan debt into retirement with me. So I've got to look at being more aggressive. My budget's got to show a more aggressive repayment of the debt now, just simply because I'm getting ready to retire. If you're wanting to take a trip, a vacation, and it's going to be expensive, how are you going to put money away for that if you've got other debt that you're paying? That's all this is saying, is that, debt has an impact on us, but it's a personal impact, and it depends on what our goals are. If we've got debt, do we have options? Yeah, we've got quite a few. Number one, every one of us have the right to call our provider and ask for a lower rate. Well, good luck with that. We used to have a lot of leverage in that regard, but we don't anymore. The credit card companies are just, they're not, very sympathetic just simply because I want the rate lowered. I used to be able to tell them I've been a customer for 10 years and I got this offer. Now the answer is, well, maybe you should take that offer. But you do have the right. Debt consolidation. A lot of people think, I've got 4 credit card accounts. If I could just consolidate those into one account, I could do a better job of managing it. I've got, maybe $20,000 altogether on those 4 cards. So what do I want to do? Debt consolidation, really, I got to go to the bank, or I got to go to the credit union, I got to get a consolidation loan. Well, number one, those are very carefully underwritten. The bank or the credit union has no collateral for that loan. They just have, your good credit, your best intentions to pay them back. So you've got to have good credit to even be considered for the loan. Secondly, debt consolidation loans right now are running anywhere from 10 to 14%. I may just simply be swapping debt. I may not be gaining a whole lot. What's debt stacking? Well, that's a method that I can use. It's a budget solution. And what it means is that I've got to find some extra money in my budget. Why do I say that? Because the minimum payment isn't going to pay the debt off. I mean, those of us that have gotten credit card statements, for the last almost 3 years now, the feds have insisted that the credit card companies show how long will it take to pay the debt off, given the amount that you have. And, we see, oh my God, it's 20 years, it's 25 years. Well, if I can find some extra money in my budget, more than just the minimum payments, I stack my debt. And I start with the smallest balance to the largest balance. Let's use those 4 credit cards that I was talking about. And let's say that the minimum payment on those was $500 a month on those 4 credit cards for $20,000. So let's say I find an extra $100 in my budget. So what do? I go to the smallest credit card, and let's say that the payment on it is only $35. But I found that extra 100. I pay $135 on it until it's gone. And then I roll it to the next one. Maybe the next one, the minimum payment is $50. So I take that $50 plus the $135. Now I pay $185 on it until it's gone, until I get to that largest one. And now I'm literally paying $600 a month on it. That works, folks. It works. It's a method that we can use ourselves. Credit counseling is a strategy that uses the services of a non-profit agency. They'll negotiate directly with my creditors. They negotiate to lower the interest rates. They negotiate to set up a set monthly payment. The combination of those means that I'll pay that debt off over a 4.5-year, 5-year period of time, no longer than 5. That could save me money on a monthly basis, but what it does do is it's definitely going to save me thousands of dollars over the lifetime of the debt. If I'm going to pay that off over a 4.5 to 5-year period versus the 20 years of just paying the minimums, I'm going to save a lot of money. The downside of credit counseling is all of the accounts end up having to be frozen or closed. Creditors aren't going to let you keep charging up if they've agreed to lower the interest rate and come up with a repayment. Debt settlement. These are the ads that we hear on radio and television. Don't file bankruptcy. We can settle the debt for 50 cents on the dollar. What this does is these are for-profit companies. They have you start making a payment. You stop paying the creditors, start making a payment to them. When they've got enough, they negotiate, and they settle with the smallest creditor first. They move down and to the next one and to the next. What they're doing is they're doing debt stacking, but they're charging you big fees. There's big credit downsides to debt settlement. There's tax implications. If I've got that $20,000 that I keep talking about in my credit cards and over, let's say, a 3 to 4 year period, I settle for $10,000, I'm not done. The IRS comes along and says, well, you know, that other $10,000 that you didn't pay, we're going to treat that as other income. You're going to pay taxes on that at your prevailing tax rate. And then finally, bankruptcy. You know, I put that down here as finally because I think that it's, you know, the last resort. But for some people, it's the best resort. I just don't want people jumping to that, you know, solution when they've got other options. Be careful with payday loans. This is an epidemic in the country. Why? Because it's so simple. You know, let's go back to my example of that $500 car bill. If I haven't saved the money, if I don't have that money in an emergency savings, I need my car. I have that repair. I need it. I've got to get to work. What do? I go to the payday lenders. They ask me 2 questions. Number 1, do you have a job? Number 2, do you have a bank account? They want to make sure I've got a job because they want to make sure that there's a way that they're going to be paid back. Number 2, they want to make sure that I've got a bank account because that's the vehicle that they're going to use to get paid back. Why? Because I'm literally going to give them a blank check. I'm either going to literally tear a check out of my checkbook to give them, or I'm going to give them the equivalent because I'm going to give them the electronic information, so that they can just simply debit my account when this comes due. But let me tell you the dirty little secret with the payday loans. These lenders don't want these loans paid back. It comes time for that, you know, it's 2 weeks and now it's payday, and with that $500 plus, you know, the interest comes due, and they say, you know, gee, $500 is a lot of money. You know, if you don't have it, you know, we understand. Why don't you just pay us a $50 rollover fee? Or a $50 reservation fee, or a $50 advance fee, something that sounds so benign. And so, you know, I'm thinking, yeah, they're right, $50 is a whole lot. I pay the $50. What happens 2 weeks later? It's payday. I've got the same decision to make, and I make the same decision. I pay the $50. You know, I'm 6 months down the road. I've paid $600 in those rollover fees. How much do I still owe them? $500 that I originally owed them, plus whatever the accrued interest is at the maximum amount. I probably owe $600 or $700, even though I've paid $600 in fees. It's a horrible trap to get caught up in, folks. Avoid it at all costs. Should I use extra cash to pay off student loans and credit cards, or contribute to my employer's retirement account? You know, this comes up in a lot of different ways. I got a bonus. I got a raise. Should I put the money in savings, or should I pay off, you know, some debt? And what I would tell you is this is a simpler answer than what you think. Just simply create 2 yields. If my question is, should I pay off my credit cards? Okay, what's the yield on that side? Well, the yield is whatever the interest rate is. Let's say it's really low. It's only 15%. Okay, it's 15%. Okay, what can I get if I put the money in savings? Well, the bank will pay me 1 or 0.2%. If I tie it up for a year in a CD, they'll pay me 1%. So I've got 1% versus 15. I always take the larger number. In this case, I pay off the credit cards. I threw a little bit of a curve. I said, you know, or do I, you know, contribute to my employer's retirement account? I threw in student loans here. Okay, so let's look at that. I've got that same amount of money. My student loans, if I've got, you know, some government loans where, you know, there's you know, a lower interest rate, I'm probably in the 3.5% to 4%. If it's a private loan, I'm probably 7-8%. My decision is, okay, so I've got 7 or 8% on this side, or do I contribute to my retirement account? How'd your 401k do last year? You know, I talked to people, hey, I made 10%, I made 12%. I talked to a lady last week that was telling me that she had gotten her year-end statement. She made 18% in her 401k. So, If I can get 10% in my 401k or pay off 7% of my student loan, I take the larger interest rate. It's the 10%. I'm going to put it in my retirement account. So just create those two yields, and that you can answer it yourself. What's the credit score? Credit score is the mechanism that the creditors use to decide whether they want to even accept an application from you. FICO, F-I-C-O, is the most common. There are 5, 6 others, however. And the important thing is that the higher the score, the better your credit. The better your credit, the better the interest rate, the better chance that you're going to be granted credit by the creditor. But it doesn't end there, because the lower credit score can cost you and impact several different ways. Now, I apply for that mortgage, and I have the minimum. So yes, they're going to accept an application. But what are they going to charge me? Same thing for the credit cards. People a lot of times raise an eyebrow when they see auto insurance rates. And I say, the auto insurers got together a couple of years ago, and they decided, what? There's really a relationship between, low credit and more incidents of accidents and tickets. Why is that? Because people are not, they're distracted because of the credit. They got a call from a collector before they went to get in the car. They're thinking about a bill that they didn't pay while they're driving. They're not thinking about their best driving habits. They're thinking about the impact of those negative credit situations. Your employment opportunities. Employers have known for a long time that relationship between credit and job performance existed. If an employer's got 2 applicants that have the same abilities, they're going to choose the person that doesn't have a credit problem. Why? Because of that same thing. They're going to be distracted at work. You may be getting you may be calls from collectors at work. You're not thinking about your job. You're thinking about, those negative credit situations. The stress that causes has real physical implications. I don't eat well. I don't sleep well. What happens? I call into work. Absentee rates go up. So the credit is an indicator to a lot of different people. Your ability to rent or to buy a home almost seems just too obvious to even be on the list. Here's the criteria that the creditors use. They won't give us an exact formula, but what they'll tell us is the highest percentage in the formula is your payment history. How have you done in the past? It's more than a third of your credit score. Almost another third, 30%, is your utilization. How much of the credit that's available to you are you using? If I've got 3 credit cards and the total amount available on those 3 is, say, $10,000, and I've charged $9,000 total on them, I've got a 90% utilization rate. Even if I'm paying my bills on time, my credit score is going to suffer because I'm using too much of the credit. Length of history, new credit, credit types. You can see that together they're only that last third. They want to see that you can manage your credit over a period of time, not that you just have new stuff. So you get types of credit. It's kind of interesting. The creditors actually, there's good credit and there's bad credit. Good credit is mortgages, student loans, car loans. I'm investing in something, in an asset that will help me. What's bad credit? Payday loans, cash advances on my credit card, applications for more and more credit cards just simply because I need it to live. this is a real good indicator. This shows the actual dollar impact of credit. You know, and look at the fine print. What we're talking about is, let's say two people are going to buy the same house, $250,000. They're each applying for a 30-year mortgage. They're putting 20% down. So what they end up with is a mortgage of $200,000. Premium credit, when we ran this just a couple of months ago, and I know that rates, you know, bounced around a little bit, but this is still very applicable. You know, premium credit at the time was 4%, got a 4% interest rate. The monthly principal and interest payment was $955 a month on that $200,000 mortgage. You know, it's interesting. Go over to that last column and look. You know, even with the very best credit available, you pay almost $144,000 of interest over the life of the loan. But look what happens as you slide down the scale. And we were very conservative. We only went up 0.25% as we went to the different categories. All the way down finally to that 620 to 659. Why did we stop there? Because 620 is the absolute lowest score that you can have to even apply for a mortgage. You can apply for an FHA mortgage with 620. Doesn't mean that it's going to be granted, but that's the lowest score that you can have to even apply. And at that time, that meant 5.25% interest rate. See, look what happens. Their monthly payment, $105. So that went up. You know, what is that? That's $150 more a month. But look what happens in the total interest. They paid $54,000 more for the same house over those 30 years. $54,000. I think this is even more dramatic. This is, you know, two people go out to buy a car, you know, $20,000. They're not going to put anything down. They want a 5-year loan. You know, they're going to buy a Toyota Corolla, right? Anybody will make this loan. Now, the best bank rate at the time was 6%, the bank rate. Now, and I understand that the dealers and the manufacturers have some rates that are better than that, but this was the best bank rate. Their monthly payment, $387 a month. They pay $3,200 over the 5-year term of buying that car. As you slide down, look what happens though to the interest rate. All the way down to that 589, 1643, and I stopped it there because I was getting quotes so much higher it was almost ridiculous. I had a couple of quotes 22, 24%. Because somebody will make you this loan. It's not like a home loan. Somebody's going to make this car loan. It's just a matter of what are they going to charge you. So I stopped it at the 1643. And by the way, 589. If you've got a couple of collection accounts, 589 is fairly typical score. So $491 a month and pay over $100 a month more. But look what happens. You pay over $6,000 for the exact same Toyota over that 5-year period of time. How do I maintain or improve my credit? Pay my bills on time, right? That's more than a third of the credit score. Keep the available credit ratio at 30% or less. That's that utilization. That's that next third. Pay off debt instead of moving it around. You can't fool the credit bureaus. If they see that you're constantly just taking those 0% interest rates and moving it rather than actually reducing some of the debt, you're going to be affected negatively from a credit scoring standpoint. Avoid closing unused accounts. This goes to one of the myths. People think, gosh, I've had a problem with that credit card. I finally get it paid off. I contact them, close it. No, don't do that. You don't have to use it. Pay it off. Just I don't care if you want to cut it up or hide it on yourself or what do you want to do. Just don't use it. Because what happens, it goes back to that utilization. If you close that credit, formally close it, it's not available to you in the utilization score. avoid frequent credit inquiries. And what we're talking about here is we're talking about those people that are constantly looking to apply for the next credit card just to supplement their day-to-day living expenses. This is not the person that's shopping for a car or a house and they may be getting 4 or 5 quotes. That does not negatively impact your credit. So you're entitled to a free credit report. Go to annualcreditreport.com. Annual credit report. This is not free credit report. Freecreditreport.com is not free. You've got to buy a service or subscribe to a service. They're relying on you not stopping that, and then they keep charging you. Annual credit report is underwritten by the government and by the 3 major credit bureaus. You will get a full credit report. So a lot of people say, yeah, one or more of those things, did touch on my finances. How do I know where to start? Well, I think what it entails is a commitment by you. If you've got, if you've got the benefit, contact your EAP for a financial referral. Talk to a financial, coach, about the issue. So contact your EAP, see if you've got this benefit. But create a plan for yourself. Decide what you're going to do. Set some goals, set some timelines. I hope that you've got some valuable, tips and insights that'll help you make better decisions regarding your finances. I'm going to stop the presentation portion at this point and open it up to questions. So thank you very much, and let's go to some questions.
Thank you so much, Dave. That was an excellent presentation. Lots of good information. And like you said, hopefully everybody found something that was useful to them. You covered a lot. We do have some great questions, so I'll go ahead and jump right in. I personally like this one from one of the attendees. Regarding your conversation about debt stacking, what if my credit card with the smallest balance also carries the lowest APR? Should I still pay it off first?
Yes. You completely, with debt stacking, you disregard the interest rate. And the reason for that is because in your case, in this example, the smallest one, smallest interest rate, that's okay. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get rid of accounts. There's a psychological benefit. I started out with the 4, in just, a few short months, I'm down to 3. It's good from a credit standpoint because I literally have paid that account off. So now I've got all of that available to me, as far as the utilization is concerned. So yes, stack them according to balance, disregard the interest rates.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. I was curious about that too. Good question. All right, the next is, do you have a recommendation or a good method for tracking my cash spending?
Well, what I say is, whatever works best, for individuals. I gave you a couple of examples of what people have done, over the years. Some people, just simply keep receipts. Other people, keep a notebook or a note card. Other people, create a spreadsheet. What we used to do when we, were dealing with checkbooks is we had to fill out a check register. We don't have that anymore. So I wish I could tell you that one method works better than another, but really it's whatever works for you individually.
Okay, great. Thank you. A couple more questions just came in. Should I close the credit card accounts that I've paid off?
There's a difference between, formally closing it and having that at a 0 balance. What I was trying to get across to people is pay the account off completely. Get it down to that 0 balance. But don't call the credit card company and formally close them, because when you call and formally close the account, you also close out that amount of credit that's available to you. Even though you're not using it, even though you don't have any intention of using it, it goes into that utilization formula. So as long as that isn't costing you anything, now if that account, let's say that there's an annual fee, then you've got to weigh that. I don't have a problem with people closing an account if there's an annual fee, but you want to make sure that you've got a couple of other accounts that are still open, because otherwise, like I said, that utilization rate is going to sneak up on you.
Okay, great. I'm going to try to combine a couple of good questions regarding credit reports. So, one attendee is asking why it seems difficult to obtain an actual free credit report, and then a couple of others are asking basically that they've heard that it's not a good idea to pull your credit report often. So, how often is too often?
Yeah, good questions. Number one, if you go to annualcreditreport.com, you'll have a choice. They'll say, who do you want to pull it from? You can pull from TransUnion, Equifax, or Experian. You'll actually make a selection. You will get a full-blown credit report. It's free. It's downloadable. You can print it, keep a copy to be working on. So it is free, and it's very, very easy. The second part to that question is how often should I do that? Well, first of all, I'm limited to once a year from each of the credit bureaus. If you're pulling information on yourself, it really doesn't negatively impact your credit. So if I'm pulling, let's say I pull a credit report from each of the bureaus, that's not going to have a negative impact on my credit. It's only those instances where I've applied for credit. I've applied for a credit card. That goes against my credit score. I apply for a mortgage. I can get as many applications. I can get as many people pulling my credit over a 60-day period of time, and it only counts as if there were one. Same thing I mentioned, car loans. Same thing. No negative impact. The negative impact comes when I'm applying for new credit, and people are actually running that against my credit. That's where it starts to negatively impact me.
All right, good. That's all great to know. Okay, I think we have time.
You have another question?
Yeah, I think we have time for one more, Dave, if you don't mind. Well, let me just. This is great. I'm getting quite a few questions, so I'm trying to man them in the background. Let's end on this question about credit card debt. At what level of debt do you feel credit counseling or more drastic means of managing the debt or taking care of the debt are appropriate?
Well, I'll say that the answer to that really, differs from situation to situation. The industry uses, a round number, $10,000. You've got, credit counseling is available from a number of different vendors at the $10,000, limit. Some of the other companies will get involved at that. But I'll say that, a lot of that depends on the impact on your budget. If you don't have the money, that you're paying, if you've got, let's say, $5,000 of credit, and the minimum payments are $200 a month, and that's causing you real distress because you're not able to pay for day-to-day living expenses, then that $5,000 is an amount significant enough to start to look at, some of the more drastic needs to get rid of it. But in round numbers, the industry typically uses $10,000, and that's where you've got options like credit counseling available to you.
All right, wonderful. We're right at the end of our hour. So thank you so much, Dave, for the great presentation and also the excellent answers to all of these questions. I believe we got everyone's questions answered. Thank you so much for your participation. That really makes the webinar great. And thanks for joining us. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Great. Thanks very much, Aaron and Eric, for your help logistically, and thank you everyone that that spent their time. I wish you much good luck and have a good rest of the day.
Thanks so much, Dave.